Happy New Year, everyone. This is Rohan from Mindfulness Everywhere, and a bit of an apology for not posting a video for a couple of weeks. Obviously, there's the New Year and Christmas period where things tend to go a bit quiet, but I've also had a really good excuse in that my wife and I just had our first child, and so I've been taking a bit of paternity leave during the last few weeks. So I hope you'll forgive me for not posting a video sooner than this. So New Year is a big time for meditation and mindfulness, well, generally for well-being. It's that sort of classic time for New Year's resolutions, people making the decision to look after themselves a bit better, be that inside or outside, however it is for you. And that means obviously that January tends to be quite a busy month for buddhify. January's always tend to be the biggest and most popular month, so we tend to have a lot of new users this month. And so I thought we'd celebrate the new year and also the influx of new users just by sharing some 5 things that you might not know about buddhify. And the first thing that some people probably don't know about buddhify is that buddhify wasn't actually the original name for the product. So I've been thinking about a project or an app related to this whole idea of out and about meditation, mobile mindfulness, if you like. And originally it was actually called the Here and Now project, which looking back is a bit of a awful name. Then I went on a meditation retreat actually, and suddenly this name came to me, buddhify. And the name buddhify just came to me sort of spontaneously, I guess, which is often happens during things like when you do meditation, you often sort of the mind becomes clear and then good ideas come. And the name was one of those good ideas. And as soon as I thought of the name buddhify, I realized that exactly that was the name of the product that I was going to make. And so there was quite a funny scene where I was trying to register the .com domain name on a really bad 3G signal in a field in Devon. So that's where the name came from. And it's one of those names which people either love or they hate, but thankfully there's more people who love it than hate it. So the second thing you might not know about buddhify is actually, if you look really closely at the logo in the app, you'll see there's a tiny 2 on the word buddhify. It almost looks like buddhify squared, and that's because we launched an earlier version of buddhify back in early 2012, and it looked quite different. It had a very different color palette, very different sort of visual feel, and much less content. It only had meditations for at home, walking, the gym, and traveling. They were the only contexts and settings for which we had meditations. And that app we made it in a really small, it was effectively a prototype, and it became quite popular. And in the sort of 18 months in which it was available, we learned so much, and then we took all that learning and put it into the product that you see now. So the buddhify you see now is technically buddhify 2, but we sort of dropped the 2, but there's a hint to it in the top of the logo if you look in the app. Now the third thing you might not know about buddhify is about the design. So one of the things that people really love about the visual design is the wheel, the color wheel. And you might not know that the artist behind that wheel is an amazing lady called Steph Posavec. She's originally from Colorado, but now lives in London, has lived in London for several years, and is probably definitely in my top 2 or 3 most brilliant creative people that I've met, and definitely in that I've had the pleasure to have worked with. She calls herself a data artist, or data designer. You might also she might also be described as an information designer, and she's a real specialist in taking complex information and creating beautiful designs, visuals, graphics, not just the sort of the average infographics that you see out and about everywhere nowadays, but much more intelligent, nuanced, beautiful ways of expressing information. She doesn't really work digitally, she would probably say, but she did do an app design for a project with Stephen Fry. Just knew that Steph was the person to work with on buddhify, and I gave her just a simple brief of saying there's these 16 sections. How do we make the interface as beautiful and joyful to use by itself. So just by using and looking at the interface, people feel calm and happier. And I think Steph really achieved that. And it's been great in the couple of years since we worked with her to see her really develop and grow. She's done all sorts of amazing work. She did a residency at the Facebook headquarters in San Francisco. She's done lots of freelance projects, and also just recently has been finishing a project called Dear Data, which is one of the most beautiful data projects you'll ever see. And I'm delighted to have heard that they'll be publishing a book. Her and her colleague Georgia Lupi, who she did the project with, are publishing the story of the Dear Data project. So I'll include the links to that project and also to her portfolio, which you really should have a look at. So that's Steph Posavec. Sort of an unsung hero of the buddhify team, but absolutely very much a hero. Now the fourth thing I wanted to share, the sort of fourth secret of buddhify, is about, I guess, it's the business model of it, or the pricing of it. So if you look at the other popular meditation mindfulness apps out there at the moment, you'll find that they all follow the same model, which is free with subscription. So you get a certain amount of content for free, and then if you want to keep using the app or get the full version of the app, you pay sort of $6 to $10 or £5 to £8 a month. I could do a whole video series about the business model of meditation apps in general, but just a very small thing I wanted to mention here, because it's quite really important to the philosophy of the work that we do, which is that the reason we have a single price for the app is that because if we were to do a subscription model, which we could totally do, people use buddhify for months and years, and would be happy to continue to pay money for it, I'm sure. But the issue with that is that it creates a dependency on the app. And my ambition for buddhify is not that someone uses the app forever and ever and they can only meditate when they have the app. For me, that is not the end result that I want. The end result I want is that people find 4, 5, 6 techniques or ideas within the buddhify wheel that really work for them, and then they take those, they essentially drop the app and then take those techniques and make them part of their life. So they're no longer dependent on buddhify. Buddhify is more like a training wheel, or like stabilizers for a bicycle. So while you're learning in the early days of your adventures in mindfulness how to do it and what to do, you might need the support. But in the future, once you really understand the mechanics and the basics, you can really go by yourself. And subscription models create dependency on apps, and I don't think mature meditators should become dependent on apps. Now the fifth thing that you might not know about buddhify is what we might call the content that never quite made it to the app. So we received thousands of suggestions from users all around the world of what additional content people would like to see in buddhify. So because we deliberately launched the app only half full, so there were only 43 tracks when we launched the first version of this app, and with the view that we were always going to add more based on two things. One was the analytics and the data of how people were using the app and which content was most popular and which content was not popular, and secondly, to respond to suggestions, so people to actively suggesting what they want, what activities of the day they wanted to have content for. So that resulted in a new section such as pain and illness and difficult emotions, and we let go of the gym section, and we jiggled around the app about a year in, and that really helped. We doubled the content. It went all the way from 45 to 85 tracks, and we had a whole new set of content that really spoke to what people wanted and what they were actually using, and that's really been a big driver to why it's been so successful. Now we also had lots of suggestions that we didn't act on, so I just wanted to share the 3 pieces of content that people most wanted but we didn't actually make or put in the app. The first is meditations for driving. This was perhaps one of the most popular requests, particularly from our American users, given that driving is a big part of commuting. So here in the UK, commuting sort of for most people means more like trains and buses and walking, Whereas in the States, because of stuff, because of roads, commuting means driving for most people. And we deliberately made the decision not to make any meditations for driving for safety reasons. Because absolutely the most important thing you should do whilst driving is to focus on driving. And there are exercises you can do whilst driving, but we felt it was inappropriate to include them, and so we're unlikely to ever have any driving meditations. The second most popular request that never made it was meditations for being on the toilet. It's a good idea. I think I'm sure that lots of people do spend a lot of time on the toilet, but we felt that making a section just for it might sort of make the wheel feel a bit odd, so we decided to pass on that. But I think you can, if you're a big toilet user and you do want to use buddhify, then absolutely you can actually use the sections which are called just meditation. They'll work just as well there. And finally, the third most popular request, which we didn't action, was meditation for whilst having sex. This was both having sex with other people and also having sex, I guess, with yourself, which we got a lot of emails around. And again, in a bit similarly to driving, I'm sure there's lots of things you could do, but we felt it might. There's some things that really help playing when in that situation, be it Otis Redding, Barry White, and so on. But we felt that playing a meditation from buddhify during those moments might not be the most appropriate setting. But if you disagree, then I'm happy to explore some sexy meditations in the future. Who knows? So that's 5 things hopefully you've learned about buddhify that you didn't know before. If you have any more questions, do please share them in the comments, and do please subscribe to the channel, and see you soon.